Hey friends, the year 2025 is upon us, and it has been officially deemed by our President and Speaker of the House as a year for draining the swamp. Maybe you are like me. I've heard that term before. I kind of thought I understood that term, but I didn't understand the depth. You know, swamps are shallow, they're wide, they're shallow, but when we're talking about draining the swamp, the corruption, the administrative state in our nation, it probably shouldn't be called a swamp. It should be called an ocean. It is deep and it is complex, and we're going to talk about just how deep it is on our podcast today. We're also going to talk about a lot of the things happening in the news right now that seem so strange they could hardly be true. It seems like satire, but it's not. It's reality. This is what happens when a nation loses its way from the Lord. But we're going to talk about these things in the podcast today. You're not going to want to miss it.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Just to clarify, this is the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast, not the Babylon Bee satire website. What we're going to talk about today seems stranger than fiction. And it is stranger than fiction, but it is reality. And boy, we're going to be in for an exciting new year.
When I scroll through my X page, there's a lot, right? I don't check it very often, so when I scroll through, there's like a million new posts. And if I scroll through quickly, I can't tell if it's Babylon Bee or like real.
Exactly.
Like because everything is so crazy now, like you're just like, no, that can't be real. That's got to be the Babylon Bee.
So let's talk about good news. Like, this is real life stuff that's good news. I just saw today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau resigned after turning Canada into the city of San Francisco. He finally decided that being a totalitarian, perverted dictator who bankrupts his nation is probably time for him to step down. He's done enough damage. So,
took 10 years or so or something like that for him to kind of discover.
We've watched some of the wacko stuff, especially during COVID. My goodness, he was like a totalitarian dictator up in Canada. So and they are hurting financially, and thank God there's relief coming for the Canadian people who have had to live under, again, this failed, woke, progressive, nonsensical Babylon Bee satire type of ideology that is absolutely imploding all across the globe, and we're grateful for that. So that's good.
Yeah, and when I first found out about it, I was like, resigning? What does that even mean? Is there another re-election? Is he just leaving? Like, well, how does this all work? Because we don't really have presidents who resign. And you mentioned a good point. It's kind of like Richard Nixon.
Yeah, unless there was some major crime or moral failure or something, it's very, very rare. But in this case, man, they're bailing ship. I think somebody in charge of the budget up there also resigned not too long ago, and so even his own party are bailing ship because it's a sinking ship. And that's our point when we do this podcast. We're trying to highlight the fact that the biblical worldview is the best worldview, not only because it's true and because it comes from Scripture and from the mouth and idea of God Almighty, from His ideas, but it's also the best because it produces the best life for everybody. It leads to human flourishing. And so, that was one of the things. The other thing we talked about in our last episode of this podcast was the H-1B visas that allow foreigners to come in, skilled foreigners, and to perform, vital jobs and services and so forth in America. And you give the example, you give the example of like a neurosurgeon from, say, of a foreign country. It doesn't matter what foreign country. The other larger issue to think about, which we talked about, is that God is the one who creates nations, and nations are good things, and borders are good things, and national identity is a good thing. And when you allow people to come in from other nations who do not share our Christian worldview, you might have someone that's a great surgeon, but somebody who doesn't embrace the American values at all. And you and I highlighted this. It's important for us to talk about where those values come from.
Yeah, I mean,
where do those values come from?
It's very confusing and I guess very convenient to say, well, we want them to have American values.
Yeah, but what's that mean?
What does that even mean? Like, American values, if you ask the left or the right, they're going to tell you completely different idea what American value is, right?
Absolutely.
So typically people will say stuff like, believe in freedom of speech, right?
Right.
You know, we believe in a democratic republic government, right? We believe in freedom of conscience and religion, right? We believe in working hard, like, you know,
Well,
where do those ideas come from, right?
Just by way, and I want you to finish that thought,
Yeah.
but by way of values, this was another good news, was seeing Speaker Johnson reestablished quickly so that our Congress can get on with important business. But in his speech after his election in October of 2023, he highlighted 7 core principles of America itself. And I want you to connect the dots for our listeners. Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Now, I think he said those were American values. Where do those values come from?
Yeah, and I feel like each of those things, we can do a podcast on each of those values, and we can dig into the scriptures and dig into the ideas behind the idea, the foundational ideas that came to those conclusions. But ultimately, they come from a Judeo-Christian worldview, from the fact that we're sinners, therefore we need accountability, right?
That we're born free. We're not born slaves to a government or any other human being.
Right. Though we're sinners, we're made in image and likeness of God. Therefore, we should be, you know, there's dignity in humanity.
The right to protect yourself, the right to own a weapon, the right to protect private property, all of these ideas.
Stewardship, so we should be...
Fiscal responsibility.
Fiscal responsibility, yeah.
Your point is well taken. So we sit around arguing whether America is a Christian nation and whatever ideas people have about what that is. It is an undisputable fact that the principles we just talked about, which shape American government and culture, all of them come directly from the Bible. And just to be clear, the Bible. And so when I was being interviewed one time by a reporter, and they were asking me if I was this is when I was running for office, if I was somehow being what's the word I'm looking for? It had to do with Islam. And it had to do with if I was like a religious pluralist, like everybody should be just accepted, you know, for who they are. And I said, let's not talk about religion. What if I asked you the question this way? Should we allow people into this country who have beliefs and belief systems that are directly opposed to what we Americans love and value? And would you let people into your country who actually hate your country and whose goal is to destroy your country? That kind of clarifies what we're talking about with worldview. It doesn't mean we hate every person who does not share our Christian faith. Of course not. We're called to love even our enemies. But the difference is, it is a fool who will welcome their enemies to come in and live among them, and even knowing that those enemies' goal is to destroy you. That's not good for any nation. And I read another article regarding Germany, how Germany is imploding right now. For this very thing. There's 1 million illegal immigrants that have come into Germany, most from the Middle East. So 1 out of 5 in that population now is not German or not born in Germany. They're foreigners. They have a fertility rate that's 1.4%. It's the lowest in the Western world. There's no military presence because the country's bankrupt because they embrace all this green ideology nonsense. And Germany is actually looking at being extinct in a matter of years because they've lost their national identity. They have no military. They're having no babies. And they have a whole group of illegal immigrants who hate everything the Germans stand for. They're losing their national identity. I think we could say the same thing is happening in America on a slower rate. I think we're fighting to make sure that doesn't happen. But even with the bombing that took place over the New Year's in New Orleans, a radicalized person supporting ISIS and all this kind of stuff. Again, we just let all these people come into our country. And now we have to deal with the threat of all kinds of terror for our own citizens.
Now, pluralism sounds good in textbooks. But when you're living in a community, if your neighbors share completely different values, you discipline your kids differently, you see marriage differently, you see education differently, you see what is good and what is wrong differently, and your kids are all mixed together, and you go to school, and all these different things, it's going to cause chaos. And what
okay. So Islam says it's okay to rape an infidel. Mm-hmm. That's anybody who's not a Muslim. That's okay. So we're seeing all kinds of young ladies raped all across Europe by Muslim men who believe it's morally okay to do that. Because Islam says it is. I mean, so this is your point. Like, what kind of fairy tale world are you living in that just suggests we can all live together in peace when we have completely different worldviews? It just doesn't work.
And I said this before, I'll say it again. In an organization, in a nation, in a family, in a business, you want diversity and unity. You need to have both. You have unity of purpose and vision. The big core things to be unified.
Pluribus unum. Diversity and unity. It's is our national motto.
But you got to be unified on the major things, and then you have diversity and perspective and talent and giftings and stuff, and that's what it forms a beautiful picture.
Absolutely.
Not the other way around.
Well, just to make our point on why would Justin Trudeau be stepping down during the ISIS heyday, all right, when ISIS was cutting off people's heads and doing all this stuff on the national news and creating all types of horrific crimes, it was Justin Trudeau who said, we welcome these people into our nation of Canada because we believe they can be rehabilitated. I mean, again, the gospel can change somebody. After you repent and after you turn to Christ, that you can be changed. But to invite terrorists into your nation who are absolutely committed to their ideology, so much so that they're killing children, they're raping women, they're cutting people's heads off. I mean, this just shows you what absolute naivete and idiocy. These folks are ideologues. They are driven by an ideology that does not fit reality, and this is the result that you get. It's terrifying. But thank God he's stepping down. There's hope for Canada, and there's hope for us as well.
I just want to say, I remember the time, was it during COVID, when the lockdown was severe in Canada and the truckers came and protest?
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, one of the things that was unbelievable to me was they locked down these truckers' bank account, I believe.
Yeah.
And they don't have access to their, and that was one of those fearful
just to
things.
Pause here. The government went into private bank accounts and froze those accounts to keep people from accessing their money. I mean, this is like a tyrannical regime type behavior when you can just come in on a whim and destroy somebody's whole livelihood.
And I think they call them terrorists because they were blocking these things and whatever. And it was just like, wow, that is the power. I mean, government will cross that line so readily.
If there's we talked about this, if there's no transcendent source to whom they must submit to. If there's not the God of the Bible that you honor, then you think you're a little God. And we're seeing this and all over even America in some of our urban areas with these, speaking of this, with these Democrat leftist people who don't worship God and who think they are God. So let's talk about something else that was on the news, which really got my eye, all right? Mr. Biden dishing out Medal of Freedom.
Oh, my goodness. This is the Babylon Bee moment.
Oh, my gosh. So this is the award that is the most influential given to citizens who have invested, given of themselves to make America great. One of the people he gave this award to was Hillary Clinton. All right, Hillary Clinton. Let's talk a little bit about Hillary. This is unbelievable. She is an election denier. She wrote a book about how she was cheated out of that election. She called millions of Americans hopelessly irredeemable. She's the only Secretary of State to make millions from other countries. She lied repeatedly about the Benghazi terror attack. She deleted 30,000 emails while under FBI investigation. And her campaign paid for and promoted the Russian hoax that was used against our president. This woman should be put in jail. She should not be given an award. But it gets even worse, all right? Because it's mind-boggling that this is the person. I've only scratched on a bit of the trail of disaster that's followed Hillary Clinton. But let's talk a little bit about the other one, George Soros. I mean, when I think of enemies of America, people who hate this country, George Soros is at the top of the list. He's right up there. This is a man who admittedly helped the Nazis round up Jews in World War II. He gave $32 billion to Democrats and Democratic causes, $32 billion. He was the mastermind behind the BLM Antifa riots. And owns corrupt judges and politicians nationwide. He's the one that funded all of these election campaigns for leftist prosecutors who have been easy on crime, and that's why we have a crime epidemic in all of our major cities. He's also named as one of the 4 main ideologues Russia accused of producing biological weapons in Ukraine. And his foundation, Open Society, has been washing money from the U.S. Department of Defense and sending it to Biden-affiliated labs in Ukraine, and Lord only knows what else.
And didn't he fund all these DA elections that are soft on crime in our major cities?
Yep.
That's why these criminals are
including
in and out of jail like it's nothing.
Oh yeah, that's why we had these limits on, you can steal, but only steal $800.
Right. Which so California recently reversed.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Of course, they're against the death penalty, which again, we're not promoting a death penalty for everyone, but my goodness, for those who commit heinous crimes, premeditated murders, acts of aggression, terrorist activities, on and on and on. There absolutely should be swift justice. And so, and even there, again, I shared this on our last podcast, we probably need to get into some biblical basis for understanding why the death penalty is biblical. And anyway, we can talk about that later. But the point is, if these are the types of people being awarded the highest civilian award in the land, then it absolutely cheapens that award. Who wants to be associated with, oh yeah, I was a Congressional Medal of Honor award winner just like George Soros. Are you kidding me? It's unbelievable.
Well, why? I mean, Biden has got, 10 days, 14 days left or something like that. Why? Everyone in the world knows Hillary Clinton, Soros are at best controversial characters,
and these are political rewards given to say thank you.
And do they get? I don't even know why. I just don't get it. Like, that's when I read it. I'm like, this has got to be a joke, right? It's got to be a joke. Why would you? I don't get it. It's crazy to me. It's crazy. It's almost he just doesn't care anymore, or whoever's on his staff. I don't even know Biden's doing it. I don't even know he's really cognizant of what's going on. Whoever's in control, whoever's calling the shots, is just like, hey, we got 20 days left. Let's just do whatever we want.
Not to mention that some of our last parting shots here, again, just to show you the wickedness of this party right now. And I pray, I've said this before, the purpose of this podcast is not to be partisan in any way, but you just got to be straight with the agenda that the Democrats are pushing. I pray there's reformation. I pray we can get back to a two-party system where you actually can respect elements of both parties. But this one takes the cake for me. We just tried passing an agreement on legislation for the deportation of illegals, starting with those who have committed are either pedophiles or have committed sex crimes since they've been here. This is the biggest no-brainer. What person in their right mind would not want to deport people who are committing acts of rape, sexual abuse, child molestation, and other heinous crimes? What right-minded American would not be clapping, saying, please send these people out of our country ASAP? And 158 Democrats, including Andre Carson here in Indiana, voted against it. They want to keep pedophiles and rapists and sexual offenders who are here illegally in our country, so evidently they can continue to do all the horrific things that they're doing to the American people. I mean, this is just, let's call it what it is. It's wicked, it's perverted, it's just unbelievable. It's like we're Babylon B once again.
Right. You read it, you're like, oh, that's a good one. Like, they really push it this time. You're like, wait, that's not Babylon B. That's that's reality.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just pray that there's swift election consequences for these folks, because this is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment. Let's talk a little bit our time that we have left here. I want to talk about this concept of draining the swamp. When Trump first ran and he talked about draining the swamp, it was kind of a new phrase. I understood the phrase, but I thought, okay, we got some bad players maybe in Washington. We got some corruption going on. We need to clean some things up, right? I had no understanding the width. And when you think swamps might be wide but shallow. But this is, I don't even know if we can call it draining the swamp. It's like draining the ocean, because this is not only wide, but this is incredibly deep.
Incredibly. Decades, maybe even centuries deep.
And I had no idea. I read a great article by the president of Hillsdale College, Larry Arnn. It was called Drain the Swamp. And this is what he shared, and I found this to be just mind-boggling. He says it's not the only 23 million who work in the administrative state. Okay, so the swamp, we're making it clear. The swamp is the administrative state. And I love the way Mike Johnson described it. If I can find the exact quote here, because he highlighted a definition of that. He said basically the administrative state is unaccountable. They're bureaucrats. They don't report to anybody. And they're not meant to pass laws. But the problem is that's exactly what's happening. They are passing laws. And let me see if I can find
unaccountable little regions who are kind of king in their own domain.
Yeah, and the problem is they make it miserable for everybody because they pass all these, administrative decrees. You got to do this and do that and legislate and regulate and all this kind of stuff. And anyway, that's the problem. But he goes on. He says, so this again was mind-boggling. 23 million people getting paid by American taxpayers that are in just the administrative state. So, first of all, you can understand why this is a gargantuan task to undertake, because you're basically putting a good portion of 23 million people either out of a job or holding them accountable, and those people don't want that. They don't want anybody messing with their job.
23 million.
Yeah, think about that. Oh, okay, this is
like a nation.
Yeah, it is. He says many of them are fine people. So we're not bashing all government workers. Many of them are fine people. It's the universities who inspire and guide it while enjoying its emoluments. It's corporations it regulates and protects and subsidizes. It's the press that keeps its secrets and tells its fibs. It's the education bureaucracy that outnumbers the teachers with whom it interferes. It is half of the American economy that it occupies, 1/2 of the U.S. economy. It is the regulations it gushes, the prosecutions it wages, the verdicts it renders. It is the influence on elections that it peddles in the grandest conflict of interest of all. He said the administrative state is a different kind of thing from constitutional and representative government. Namely being, we are accountable to those who are in constitutional representative government are accountable to the people. Mm-hmm. These people are not accountable to us. They're a whole other layer out there.
Yeah.
And so even during COVID, when we were making the argument, no, don't listen to some health official told you have to do X, Y, or Z, or you got to close your business. Where did that go before Congress? No, Congress never voted on any of these things. This was all done under these emergency powers, and they were done by health departments for the sake of protecting public health. It was a bunch of baloney, and there was no accountability for these people. Again, I'm not saying they weren't well-meaning, but when it comes to our liberties and our rights, it was an absolute trampling of those liberties. Listen to this, some more facts here. In the 1930s, government consumed 12% of the gross domestic product of the nation. Today, the government handles a little over 50% of the nation's wealth. So there's been a massive shift in wealth from your and my pockets and the pockets of the citizens to the pocket of the federal government, to where half of that now is run by them. This is interesting, too. He says another significant change has been the centralization of government. In the 1930s, more than 60% of the money in government was raised and spent in counties, cities, and towns. Public money was held near the people who contributed to it. The federal government controlled less than 20%. Now those numbers are flipped upside down. Yeah. We have a top-down country, whereas once we had a bottom-up country.
That's because in the city of Crown Point, they vote a $60 billion bill to send to a foreign nation. We'll just go down to the square and find the mayor and say, don't do that, man.
Oh, my God.
Can't do that in D.C., though. Right?
No, exactly.
Local government is like down the street.
Yeah, you walk down and you say...
Or we go to the State House.
What are you doing? And then the next election, the mayor's no longer the mayor.
You go next door, knock on his door, and be like, dude, why are you sending...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the point. That's the point. When government is closest to the people, you have a responsive and effective government. That's why most of our decisions should be local decisions, not decisions made for us by all these bureaucratic arms.
Who never have to see you, face you. You call them, they don't care.
Oh, and this is what he says. Today we have more than 100 years of trying. The weaknesses of the progressive regime become apparent. So we've got the progressive regime, as we said, is exploding. At its core, it undermines the principle of consent of the governed. It vaunts expertise and professionalism over politics and the principle of representation. I thought that was really good. It has to be the people. It has to be local officials. We have to hold people accountable. There has to be voted upon. There has to be elections. All these things. That's why secure elections, some of these things we were fighting for this last cycle were so important. If you can't have a fair election, you can have zero accountability. Yeah. And the whole system's rigged. But again, my point in sharing all of this was just simply, I could not believe the vast expanse of the swamp. And so our president is going to have his hands full, for sure, as it relates to clearing out the swamp, because there's going to be a lot of pushback as it relates to this. I'm searching all over here for that one.
Because the people who are supposed to clear the swamp are in the swamp, so how do you even know who's in the swamp? That's what happened in in Trump's first term. Is you think you're hiring someone to go clear the swamp, but they're part of the swamp.
Yeah, well, exactly. And there was some concern I just saw on X from somebody sharing that Trump last time tried to be, diplomatic. They were concerned about optics. Yeah. They didn't want to come in and clean house because, wow, he just swept everybody out of here. Yeah. But there's something, as you said, there's something good because he needs to have a cabinet and people that are responsible for maintaining oversight over these agencies that are actually for him. And supporting of what he's doing, or at least just doing their job and not blocking.
Subtly blocking him, right? Yeah.
So he says here again, Speaker Johnson pledged to end the weaponization of the federal government against pro-life advocates, and roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of the government known as the administrative state. We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of the government, he says. We're going to return the power to the people and serve them with a leaner federal workforce. And our people do not deserve to be ruled by thousands of bureaucrats they never voted for, they never met, and they can never hold accountable. I like that. They never voted for, they never met, and they can never hold accountable.
I think if you talk to 85% average Americans of all walks of life, all industries, of all political persuasion, they probably feel that pressure. Why am I made to do this? Who said to do this? Who made this law? This law's too complicated. How do I even follow these laws? Do I have to hire an accountant to figure out how to comply with these laws that you just created that I never really even know who not even vote for me?
So back to Germany. Yeah. When you think of the German automobile industry, I mean Volkswagen, and I'm trying to think of some of the other
Mercedes.
German built.
BMW.
They were known for producing amazing engineering, right? Amazing automobiles. The German engineering, sector of the market is going under. Why? They've obviously have a long history of making really great cars. You know why? Because some bureaucrat came up with a green policy that by such and such year, all cars, in Germany have to be electric. Well, we've already said the electric car market has to be incredibly subsidized by the government. That violates the principle of free markets. Now the government's pushing a product in the private sector that they have no business pushing because it's the private sector. It violates free market principles. So they have to come under and make this work, right? They're going to force us all. And the point is simply this again. Whoever voted for this? I never saw that put in a bill that was passed by Congress. We just get informed of these things. By such and such year, all the automobile industry has to conform to such and such standard. Who made that? Oh, you're not allowed to have gas stoves. Who said that? The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And this is the point. It's this administrative branch called the swamp. that's creating havoc, passing all this regulation, which, by the way, now when Trump comes in, you saw the latest dig by Biden when he basically shut down all offshore drilling and everything else, and which was really a stick in the heart to all the people that are employed in those industries. But it was a big stick in the heart for Trump, because now he's got to go back and got to untangle and undo the mess that this absolutely lame, failed, loser president that we've had to put up with for the last 4 years decides he's going to create havoc on his way out. And of course, it's probably not even him. He probably doesn't know what day it is today, but it's somebody in his administration is doing this simply to go against the will of the American people. Yeah. Anyway, it's frustrating. This is what happens when you lose the common core of who we are as a people. When you lose any sense of morality, justice, virtue, you get a big nasty swamp. And so we should be, praise the Lord, we're having a certification of the election. Now we need to pray for a smooth transference of power, which is going to happen on the 20th. And then we have a lot of work to do. We're going to be having on the 19th a prayer meeting here to pray into all of that. And we hope you'll come out and be a part of that. But that's when the work really begins. And I pray that it's swift and fast, and that while we have a majority of people who actually love America and want to see America blessed, that we can get a lot of work done in the next 2 years. Yeah. And all of that as well, to say that this is a time for the church to stand. If you didn't see the message on Sunday, talking about building a house that lasts, we talked about the importance of making sure. I just had this thought today. We probably need to drain the church swamp.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I wonder how much unaccountable, bureaucratic rules, regulations, dysfunction, lack of productivity that we could probably, we point the finger at government, but we probably need to look in the mirror as a local church.
Every industry, every sector. Human beings, where human beings belong.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just thinking, okay, we have a job to do. We have a mission. It's called the Great Commission, leading people to Christ, making disciples in every arena, whether it's in the marketplace, the church, wherever. And we need to make sure we're cutting out the fat in the local church and draining the local church swamp as well, so that we're effectively, doing what God's called us to do and being who God's called us to be. So anyway. Wow,
that was a lot.
But we do thank you guys for watching. We do select. We're soliciting. That's the word I'm looking for. Soliciting your feedback and input as you have a chance to spend this time with us. But we're so grateful for you, and we look forward to being with you again next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.